will hear a number of different recordings, and you will have to answer questions on what you hear. There will be time for you to read the instructions and questions, and you will have a chance to check your work. All the recordings will be played once only. The test is in 4 sections. At the end of the test, you will be given 10 minutes to transfer your answers to an answer sheet. Now turn to Section 1. Section 1. You will hear an estate agent talking to a customer who wants to rent a house. First, you have some time to look at questions 1 to 8. Now we shall begin. You should answer the questions as you listen, because you will not hear the recording a second time. Listen carefully and answer questions 1 to 8.
Good morning. How can I help you?
Hello. I'm interested in renting a house somewhere in the town.
Right. Could I have your name, please?
Yes, it's Stephen Godfrey.
And tell me how many bedrooms you're looking for.
Well, we'd need 4 because I'm going to share the house with 3 friends.
OK. There are several of that size on our books. They mostly belong to families who are working abroad at the moment. What about the location?
It'd be nice to be central.
Oh, that might be difficult, as most houses of that size are in the suburbs. Still, there are a few. What's your upper limit for the rent?
We'd like something around £500 a month, but we could go up to £600 if we have to. But we can't go beyond that.
Do you know how long you want to rent the house for? The minimum let is 6 months, as you probably realise.
We're at college here for 2 years, and we don't want to have to move during that time if we can avoid it.
Right. And how soon do you want to move in? All our lets start on the 1st of the month.
Well, as soon as possible, really, so that means September 1st.
OK, let me have a look at what we've got. We have photographs of all the houses on our book, so you can get an idea of what they're like. There's this one in Oakington Avenue at £550 a month, combined living room and dining room with a separate kitchen. It doesn't have a garage, though you can park in the road.
We'd prefer to have one if possible.
Right. Then have a look at this house in Mead Street. It's got a very large living room and kitchen, bathroom, cloakroom.
How much is it?
That one's £580. It's very well furnished and equipped. It also has plenty of space for parking, and it's available for a minimum of a year. Oh, and there's a big garden.
I don't think we could cope with that, to be honest. We'll be too busy to look after it.
OK. Then there's this older house in Hamilton Road. Living room, kitchen, diner, and it has a study. £550 a month.
That looks rather nice. But whereabouts in Hamilton Road?
Towards the western end.
Oh, that'll be very noisy. I know the area.
Yes, it's pretty lively. But some people like it, though. Well, what about this house in Devon Close?
That looks lovely.
There's a big demand for houses in that area, so prices tend to be quite high. But this one hasn't been decorated for a few years, which has kept the rent down a bit. It's got a living room, dining room and small kitchen, and it's £595 a month. I think it would suit you from what you've said.
It sounds fine.
Before you hear the rest of the conversation, you have some time to look at questions 9 and 10. Now listen and answer questions 9 and 10.
Why is that part of town so popular?
Well, there's a big scheme to improve the district, and it'll soon have the best facilities for miles around.
What sort of thing?
There's a big sports centre under construction, which will be very impressive when it's finished. In fact, the swimming pool's already opened, ahead of schedule, and it's attracting a lot of people.
What about cinemas? Are there any in the area?
The only one closed down last year, and it's now in the process of being converted into a film museum. The local people are trying to get a new cinema added to the scheme.
I think I heard something about a plan to replace the existing concert hall with a larger one.
Ah, that's due to start next year.
Well, it sounds an interesting area to live in. Could I go and see the house, please?
Yes, of course.
That is the end of section 1. You now have half a minute to check your answers.
Now turn to section 2. Section 2. You will hear a fitness manager of a leisure club talking to some new members. First, you have some time to look at questions 11 and 12. Now listen and answer questions 11 and 12.
On behalf of LP Clubs, I'd like to welcome you all here today. My name's Sandy Fisher, and I'm one of the fitness managers here. Before we start our tour of the club, I'll just run through some basic information about the facilities we have here, including recent improvements, and explain the types of membership available. Our greatest asset is probably our swimming pool, which at 25 metres isn't Olympic-sized, but now we've expanded it to 8 lanes, it's much wider. This means there are rarely more than a couple of people at a time in each lane. Unfortunately, there isn't space for an outdoor pool here, but the glass roof on the swimming pool is partly retractable, which means you can enjoy something of the open-air experience on warmer days. Our recently refurbished fitness suite has all the latest exercise equipment, including 10 new running machines and a wide range of weight training machines. Each member is given full training in how to operate the equipment, and there is always a trainer on duty to offer help and advice. Although we do have adult-only times after 6 and at certain times at weekends, children are well catered for. Older children continue to benefit from a wide range of tuition, anything from trampolining to yoga.
Before you hear the rest of the talk, you have some time to look at questions 13 to 20. Now listen and answer questions 13 to 20.
One thing all our members appreciate about us is that we take very good care of them. This starts on day 1 with your personal assessment. You are asked to fill in a questionnaire giving details of any health problems. One of our personal trainers will then go through this with you. The trainer will then take you through the safety rules for using the equipment in the fitness suite. During your next exercise session, a personal trainer will work with you to make sure you understand these. It's very important to do this because we really do want to avoid having any sports injuries. There's a lot more to looking after yourself than simply lifting weights. At the end of the personal assessment, the trainer will draw up a plan outlining what you should try to achieve within a 6-week period. This will then be reviewed at the end of the 6 weeks. Now, I'll just quickly run through the types of membership we have available. All members must pay a joining fee of £90 in addition to the rates for the monthly membership fees. Gold membership entitles you to free entry at all LP clubs. There are now LP clubs in all major cities and towns, so if you travel a lot, this will be a great advantage. Individual gold membership costs £50 a month, and joint membership for you and your partner will cost £75. Premier membership is for professional people whose work commitments make it difficult for them to use the club during the day, and so LP gives booking preferences to Premier members at peak times. This means you'll find it easier to book the sessions at times that suit you. Reciprocal arrangements with other LP clubs are available to Premier members. Premier membership is for individuals only, but you'll be sent passes for guests every month. The monthly fee is £65. You don't have to have any special clothes or equipment when you visit the club. We provide robes and hairdryers in the changing rooms, but it's very important to remember your photo card, because you won't be able to get in without it. For people who aren't working during the day,
That is the end of section 2. You now have half a minute to check your answers.
Now turn to section 3. Section 3. You will hear a university tutor and a new student called Paul discussing Paul's work experience and Latin American Studies course. First, you have some time to look at questions 21 to 26. Now listen carefully and answer questions 21 to 26.
I've been reading your personal statement, Paul. First, let's talk about your work experience in South America. What took you there? Was it to gain more fluency in Spanish?
Well, as I'm combining Spanish with Latin American studies, my main idea was to find out more about the way people lived there. My spoken Spanish was already pretty good, in fact.
So you weren't too worried about language barriers?
No. In fact, I ended up teaching English there, although that wasn't my original choice of work.
I see. How did you find out about all this?
I found an agency that runs all kinds of voluntary projects in South America.
What kind of work?
Well, there were several possibilities.
You mean construction, engineering work?
Yes, getting involved in building projects was an option. Then there was tourism, taking tourists for walks around the volcanoes, which I actually chose to do, and then there was work with local farmers.
But you didn't continue with that project. Why not?
Because I never really knew whether I'd be needed or not. I'd thought it might be difficult physically, but I was certainly fit enough. Now, I wanted to do something that had more of a proper structure to it, I suppose. I get demotivated otherwise.
What do you think you learned from your experience? It must have been a great opportunity to examine community life.
Yes, but it was difficult at first to be accepted by the locals. It was a very remote village, and some of them were reluctant to speak to me, although they were always interested in my clothes and how much I had to pay for them.
Well, that's understandable.
Yes, but things soon improved. What struck me was that when people became more comfortable with me and less suspicious, we really connected with each other in a meaningful way.
You made good friends?
Yes, with two of the families in particular.
Good. What about management? Did you have a project manager?
Yes, and he gave me lots of advice and guidance.
And was he good at managing too?
That wasn't his strong point. I think he was often more interested in the academic side of things than filing reports. He was a bit of a dreamer.
And did you have a contract?
I had to stay for a minimum of 3 months. My parents were surprised when I asked to stay longer, 6 months in the end. I was so happy there.
And did anything on the administration side of things surprise you? What was the food and lodging like?
Simple, but there was plenty to eat, and I only paid $7 a day for that, which was amazing, really. And they gave me all the equipment I needed, even a laptop.
You didn't expect that then?
No.
Well, I'll look forward to hearing more.
Before you hear the rest of the discussion, you have some time to look at questions 27 to 30. Now listen and answer questions 27 to 30.
But now let's look at these modules. You'll need to start thinking about which ones you'll definitely want to study. The first one here is Gender Studies in Latin America. It looks at how gender analysis is reconfiguring civil society in Latin America. Women are increasingly occupying positions in government and in other elected leadership positions in Latin America. I think you'd find it interesting.
If it was to do with people in the villages rather than those in the public sphere, I would.
OK. What about second language acquisition?
Do you think I'd find that useful?
Well, you've had some practical experience in the field. I think it would be.
I hadn't thought about that. I'll put that down as a definite then.
OK. What about Indigenous women's lives? That sounds appropriate.
I thought so too, but I looked at last year's exam questions and that changed my mind.
Don't judge the value of the course on that. Maybe talk to some other students first, and we can talk about it again later.
OK.
Yes, and lastly, will you sign up for Portuguese lessons?
My Spanish is good, so would I find that module easy?
Not necessarily. Some people find that Spanish interferes with learning Portuguese, getting the accent right too. It's quite different in a lot of ways.
Well, I'd much sooner do something else then.
All right. Now, what we need to do is make a...
That is the end of section 3. You now have half a minute to check your answers.
Now turn to section 4. Section 4. You will hear a university lecture about an endangered bear in British Columbia, Canada, known as the spirit bear. First, you have some time to look at questions 31 to 40. Now listen carefully and answer questions 31 to 40.
Today, we continue our series on ecology and conservation with a look at a particularly endangered member of the black bear family. 1 in 10 black bears is actually born with a white coat, which is the result of a special gene that surfaces in a few. Local people have named it the spirit bear, and according to the legends of these communities, its snowy fur brings with it a special power. Because of this, it has always been highly regarded by them, so much that they do not speak of seeing it to anyone else. It is their way of protecting it when strangers visit the area. The white bear's habitat is quite interesting. The bear's strong relationship with the old-growth rainforest is a complex one. The white bear relies on the huge, centuries-old trees in the forest in many ways. For example, the old-growth trees have extremely long roots that help prevent erosion of the soil along the banks of the many fish streams. Keeping these banks intact is important because these streams are home to salmon, which are the bear's main food source. In return, the bear's feeding habits nurture the forest. As the bears eat the salmon, they discard the skin and bones in great amounts on the forest floor, which provide vital nutrients. These produce lush vegetation that sustains thousands of other types of life forms, from birds to insects and more. Today, the spirit bear lives off the coast of the province of British Columbia on a few islands. There is great concern for their survival, since it is estimated that less than 200 of these white bears remain. The best way to protect them is to make every effort to preserve the delicate balance of their forest environment. In other words, their ecosystem. The greatest threat to the bear's existence is the loss of its habitat. Over many years, logging companies have stripped the land by cutting down a large number of trees. In addition, they have built roads which have fractured the areas where the bear usually feeds, and many hibernation sites have also been lost. The logging of the trees along the streams has damaged the places where the bears fish. To make matters worse, the number of salmon in those streams is declining because there is no legal limit on fishing at the moment. All these influences have a negative impact on the spirit bear's very existence, which is made all the more fragile by the fact that reproduction among these bears has always been disappointingly low. And so, what's the situation going forward? Community organizations, environmental groups, and the British Columbia government are now working together on the problem. The government is now requiring logging companies to adopt a better logging method, which is a positive step. However, these measures alone may not be sufficient to ensure a healthy population of the spirit bear in the future. Other steps also need to be taken. While it is important to maintain the spirit bear's habitat, there also needs to be more emphasis on its expansion. The move is justified as it will also create space for other bears that are losing their homes to damage.
That is the end of section 4. You now have half a minute to check your answers.